Michael Turner, the only survivor of his unit in Vietnam, recalls the nightmare that began in 1967. He and four friends, Danny, Luis, Red, and James, sailed off to war. Young men bound by a promise to return home together. But even on the ship, a bell tolled with no hand to strike it. In Saigon, they met a mysterious woman in brown who warned them, "All gold is blood." In a burned village, she appeared again. Red fired his weapon, yet her body vanished, leaving only a candle that never burned out, and incense smoke twisting into the shape of 5 kneeling men. Soon after, James's notebook began to write on its own, spelling out a grim prophecy: 5 go forward, 4 fall, 1 returns. Deeper in the jungle, they uncovered a massive stone door carved with an ancient warning: "Disturb not the kings of the earth, lest your blood weigh their gold." Red forced it open. Inside was a chamber overflowing with gold, and at its center, a coffin that bled. As the bell thundered from beneath the earth, the curse awoke. But that was only the beginning. What stirred beneath that tomb had already chosen its price. And in part 2, the true horror will step out from the darkness. The jungle held its breath with us. We sat in the afterglow of blasphemy, torches guttering, lungs still coated with the cold incense that hissed from the broken seam of the coffin below. Night rose like floodwater around the ruin. Somewhere far off, a civet barked once and then thought better of it. Above, a ceiling of leaves kept the moon from seeing what we had done. Red counted coins by the fistful clink, 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 like a man laying out reasons to live forever. James wrote until his wrist cramped, eyes fever bright, the pencil whispering across paper as if it were being pulled, not pushed. Danny prayed out loud in a hoarse, steady chant that tried to lay a bridge over a river with words alone. Luis stared at his left wrist, where an angry rash had bloomed after we touched the tomb, an oval of red that pulsed faintly like something seen through skin. Billy had the first watch. We decided that because it made sense militarily and because none of us wanted to sit alone with our thoughts. He perched at the edge of our rough camp with his rifle laid across his knees, a boy trying on the posture of a man, the torchlight turning his freckles to constellations on a new map. I could still smell the tomb on us, the copper of old blood, the sweetness of rot, the mineral tang of stone that hasn't seen light since someone gave it a king's name. "We should seal it," Danny murmured to me, low, as if speaking too loudly would open the door further. He sat with his Bible splayed on his thighs like a broken-winged bird. "Right now. Pack the seam with mud and stone. Leave it. Walk. And tell command what?" Red snorted without looking up. "That we found a piggy bank and decided to leave it for Charlie? Not a chance." "It's not money," Luis whispered, rubbing his wrist. "It's a contract." Red glanced over, grinned cruel and bright. "You getting poetic, Ramirez? Thought that was Whitman's job." He jerked his chin at James, who didn't look up, didn't stop. The page drank his pencil as fast as he fed it. "It is a contract," James said softly, still writing. "Signed and eyes gouged out in lids that cry stone. We broke it. Now it needs a countersignature." "From who?" I asked, though I already knew. A bell answered from under the earth. A single iron syllable, deep enough to put cracks in your breath. Bong. The coins in Red's hands rang in sympathy, tiny, tinny, a choir of thieving children. We built a fire because men do. It gave us a circle where fear could stand outside and pace. Sparks rose, met the canopy, died unheard. I cleaned my rifle, not because it needed it, but because I needed something that obeyed my hands. When the bolt snapped back, that sharp, righteous sound stiffened my spine with the memory of a world where cause and effect hadn't learned new tricks. The jungle pressed closer. The seam we'd opened below us glowed sometimes in my head, the way a fresh wound makes itself the center of everything. "Michael?" Billy's voice floated back small. You hearing? Singing? Tree frogs, I lied. They've got lungs like opera. He didn't laugh. Right. Time lengthened. Shadows found longer versions of themselves. The fire settled into a rhythm of collapse and insistence. Red finally bundled his purloined shine into a field sack and lashed it as if the night might try to claim it back by force. The sack thunked at his side, heavier than canvas has a right to be. He laid his palm on it the way a father lays a hand on a belly that used to be his. It's ours, he said to no one in particular, drowsy with triumph. We did the work, we take the prize. It's not a prize, Danny said, not looking up. It's a test we failed. James had stopped writing and was reading his own words as if someone else had put them there. His lips moved. He smiled once, small and real, the way a man does when a line lands perfect and awful. We opened the door, he murmured. Now the room needs occupants. Enough, I said, too sharp. Heads turned. I softened. We rest. We move at dawn. Can't drag a sunrise over a bad night, Louis said. But I'll try. We didn't sleep. We performed sleep. Bodies lay down, eyes closed. Brains kept at it. Billy hummed to keep his courage company. Some melody from home cars with chrome smiles, girls on porches, summers that stretched like lazy cats. The tune helped me build a small, flammable house in my chest and sit inside it a while. The humming stopped. Silence rolled into the space and settled like a stone. Billy? I said. The fire popped as if reminding me it was here. He didn't answer. I stood, moved to him, picked my way between roots that looked like ribs. He sat very still, spine straight, head cocked like a listener in a church. His rifle lay crosswise, hands loose on it, fingers curved as though asleep at attention. His eyes were open and unblinking, the particular kind of unblinking that doesn't belong to living. Billy. I kept my voice gentle, the way you talk to men on ledges. His lips moved. A whisper crawled out, not English, not Vietnamese, not anything my ears recognized. The syllables were wet, rolled, old. They slid across the night and oiled the leaves. Danny, I said over my shoulder. With me, he came, Bible in hand. When he heard the sound leaving Billy's mouth, he went white in a way battle hadn't earned from him yet. That's prayer, he breathed, but not ours. Speak to him, I said. Danny put his palm on Billy's shoulder. William Thompson, he said, gentle and full name. Son, listen to me. You're scaring us. Billy's head turned slow, like a puppet's turn worked by a tired hand. The eyes that found Danny's face had no boy in them, only shoreline, only tide. She calls, Billy whispered in his own tongue this time. She calls, and the coins answer. We can leave, I said. I crouched so we were face to face. We can close it. We can, he smiled, wrong. You can't close a hunger, he said with a voice that belonged to someone who knew how hunger ends. His right hand, swift as mercy, lifted the rifle. I moved, but there was nowhere to move to that mattered. He jammed the barrel under his jaw and pulled the trigger. The shot blew the night open. Birds leapt out of 100 trees with bad language. The flame from the muzzle painted the roots with a color I don't forgive. A spray of red baptized the dirt. Billy's body tilted and fell like a felled sapling. The rifle clattered. The echo came back wrong, as if the jungle had learned to answer with its own gun. Red lurched to his feet, swearing, hands up uselessly in time to nothing. Luis made a sound that had more in common with the first syllable a man says than with any language after. James stood very still. His face became a page blank. Then reading, then accepting before the pencil, found his hand again, as if it had been there the whole time. The bell tolled. It didn't ring like a thing struck by a thing. It spoke like a throat. The note rolled into us and through us and out into the trees to inform them ceremoniously that numbers had begun. Danny fell to his knees in blood, hands reaching for Billy's face, smearing what couldn't be unspread. Oh God, oh God, oh God. he said like a fist knocking at a locked door. I took 2 steps back because my body loves me enough to keep me upright sometimes. The world kept its shape. The fire crackled on brazen, alive, uninterested. The sack at Red's hip chimed a cluster of small, bright, happy notes, as if it had been waiting for its part. Not one of ours, Red said, too fast, voice skittering. Not one of ours, he repeated, meaning we didn't do it. But we had, and the knight didn't care to argue. Take your hands off him, James told Danny softly. It's done. Danny looked up like a man interrupted at his child's christening by a stranger. You shut your mouth. James looked down at his page. His pencil, God forgive, that pencil dipped into the pooled blood, and he scrawled, the first debt paid. The letters shone briefly moist, then went dark. Red saw him do it and crossed the space like something released from a trap. He hit James full in the chest, drove him into a tree, jammed his forearm under his jaw. Write that again and I'll carve it on your forehead. Red, I said, standing but not yet moving. If I laid hands on men every time a moment demanded it, I wouldn't have a hand left to keep my own face on. James pinned, calm choked, and smiled at once. You can't threaten an inscription, he croaked. You can only add to it. Red's free hand formed a fist out of habit. He held it there, a stupid, honest animal. Then he let it unmake itself and stepped back, breathing hard, daring anyone to name that mercy what it was. Help me, Danny said. Help me cover him. We lifted Billy with soldier's care and laid him with soldier's tenderness on a poncho liner, the color of things you don't want to look at. He was lighter than fear. His face had found an expression that didn't belong to him or to death, serene and surprised. The entry wound was small and brutal. The exit wound was much of what Europe learned in 1914. As we set him down, blood came in a last bright cough. It spread across his chest in curls, in loops, in lines. I thought it was random. Then it wasn't, Luis gasped. He held up his own wrist. The red oval there had sharpened into a circle. In the center of Billy's chest, the blood traced the same. A perfect, small bell. Not ink, not paint. A shape the world insisted on. What is that? Red whispered. And for the first time all day there was no swagger around the words. The mark, James said reverently. The ledger wants its own notation. The bell tolled again louder, closer, a punctuation with poor manners. The coins in the sack answered like a nest of tiny bells, laughing at their bigger cousin. I leaned close to Billy's face. Some part of me still believed in last breath. Words, keys, men keep until they can hand them to somebody. His mouth opened. Air left him. One, he whispered. The fire shrugged. The night adjusted its shoulders around us. I stood and said it out loud because speaking makes some truths too heavy to float away. He said one. Which means, James began. It means shut up, I snapped, and he did, which surprised us both. Danny fumbled for his Bible and then put it down. He held Billy's cold hand in both of his like a man trying to warm a coin to see the face better. Into your hands, he said, voice steadier than mine deserved. Even here, we should have buried him right there. We tried. The ground had roots like ribs. Every clod we lifted slid back in as if the earth were a patient animal, reclaiming the blanket we kept pulling. We dug with e-tools and bayonets and fingernails until we found a space that pretended to be enough. We lowered Billy in, and the bell tolled again, and the walls sighed as if exhaling an opinion and fell in to cover his face. Stop, I said. Say it. Danny's lips moved. He said nothing I could remember later except the word mercy 4 times. We packed the dirt and then we didn't stand. We just stayed there half-bent, cowed, waiting to see if the world intended to convene a jury. It didn't. It had the verdict already. When we finally made camp again, we did it farther from the seam and closer to the feeling of running. Red dragged his sack to the edge of the firelight and sat with his back against a tree as if it would keep him from being stolen. Luis kept rubbing his wrists like men rub memories, hard enough to change nothing. James wrote. Of course he wrote. He didn't look at us while he did it. I think he was ashamed to. "Tell me we're leaving," Luis said into his sleeve. "We're leaving," I said, "because leadership is sometimes a script with your name wrong on the top page." "In the morning," Red added, "because cowardice likes a night to make itself more comfortable." "In the morning," Danny agreed, "because if he didn't agree, we'd see him as we were seeing him, and he didn't have the breath for 2 fights." We didn't sleep. We described sleep with our bodies while the rest of us kept watch. The fire ate wood and pretended indifference. The jungle practiced rustling. Once, somewhere near, a branch cracked with the particular authority of something heavier than monkeys stepping where steps weren't allowed. "Michael," James said quietly after a long hour, "do you hear them?" "The frogs?" I said. "The bells." His voice was almost happy. "They're counting in more than one direction." I didn't ask what that meant. He would have told me. The wind turned. It came low across the ground like a thing that knows how to move sound where it needs to go. With it came a smell like pennies in a mouth. With it came something else, a faint, high ringing, as if a child somewhere in the dark were playing with a handbell, considerate and patient. Ding! The hair on my arms stood up to contribute their thin opinion. Red's head jerked toward the sound and then away from it as if he'd been slapped and wanted to pretend he hadn't. Luis flinched, clapped his palm over his wrist, hissed. "Hot, Billy?" Danny whispered without meaning to. He looked at the heap of earth we'd made. He would have gone and patted it like a restless dog if I hadn't put my hand on his forearm. "Don't," I said. He swallowed, nodded, didn't move. The high bell rang again. Ding. Another answered it farther down in the earth. Low, humid, patient. Bong. The two notes met in my chest and stood there like neighbors who don't speak but still share a fence. James wrote the rhythm down. He wasn't transcribing sound anymore. He was taking dictation from a math problem. Sometime near dawn, the bells stopped, or we stopped hearing them, or our heads were too full of them to notice new ones. The fire sighed, climbed down into its ash. The light that replaced the night was gray, metallic, more like a bruise than a beginning. I stood first because there is safety in acting like you know what comes next. "We move," I said. Before anyone could stand, the radio in my pack, quiet all night like a piece of sleep, crackled awake. I grabbed it like it owed me money. "Falcon 1, I said. "Copy." Static. Then, softly, like a voice speaking through wet cloth, 2. "Say again." I barked, because shouting helps when you're not being heard. 2, the radio said. "Definite now." Billy's voice. "Not possible." The device went to static again and then to silence, the kind that follows lies. Danny crossed himself. Luis whispered in Spanish, which always sounded to me like a better language for begging. Red's jaw worked. Fists opening and closing like dogs testing teeth. "No more games," he said to the dirt. "No more." "That's the wrong prayer," James murmured, shutting the notebook and tucking it into his blouse, as if it might keep his heart from hopping ship. "Games end. Stories end when they want to." "What do we do?" Luis asked, his eyes on me like a rope. "We walk out," I said. "We leave the door. We leave the village. We leave the bells. We leave everything." Red stood, shouldered his sack, grunted as if it had learned a new number overnight. "We take what we earned." "No," I said. He smiled without mirth. "Try and stop me, Turner." "I won't," I said truthfully. "She will." "Who?" he said, but the word died a foot from his mouth, because the woman in brown was standing where the path led, 20 paces out, hands folded neatly, eyes lit with a light that has never been for seeing. She didn't move. She didn't need to. The jungle did it for her, making way, leaning in, presenting her like a truth returned to sender. Danny sucked his breath. Luis made the sign of the cross, and then another, as if signatures mattered. James took a half step forward, then back, his body trying on ideas like coats. Red spat to the side and pretended he hadn't missed his target. I lifted my rifle and then let it down. There are things you don't aim at because you already know who shoots first. The woman raised one palm toward the heap of dirt that hid Billy and lowered the other toward the place under our boots where the door slept. Then she pointed past me, past Red, past all of us at a point in the air that didn't exist and never would. Her finger hung there like a compass needle that had found the only north that mattered. The high bell rang, the low bell answered. We stood in that sound and learned, like children, the first part of arithmetic. 1, I said because he had said it. The woman's head tilted, approving or grieving, I never knew which on her, and in the tilt I heard the rest of the equation waiting its turn. Behind me the ground made a small settling sound, as if the grave had shifted its weight to get comfortable. I didn't turn to look. There are looks you never survive. Move, I said again, and this time they did. Red took the lead because he didn't trust anyone with his back, and because lead is where bullets go. Luis limped behind him, rubbing his wrist as though friction could sand a curse smooth. Danny fell into step beside me, his Bible tucked away, his mouth silent now the prayers had moved inward like organs. James brought up the rear, the notebook under his arm, the pencil behind his ear, a scribe to a court no one sane would serve. We left the door behind us, but the numbers moved with us. The first dead man had taken his place in a column that would not rest until the math finished chewing. Before we broke into the wider path, I looked once, just once, back through the trees. The seam where we'd pried the tomb had gone dark. The jungle had laid its green palm over it again. For a heartbeat, in the space between leaves, I saw Billy sitting at the edge of our fire, as if he had not yet learned the new rule. He lifted his chin in my direction, a small, shy salute. Then the picture folded in on itself and became trees. We walked. The morning did not get lighter. Behind us, deep under earth, a bell that had already decided on our worth kept time. Dawn didn't arrive. It only changed the shade of darkness. We left the ash field with one body buried in shallow dirt and one new bell echoing in our chests. Everything weighed more. Rifles heavier, the air thicker, the very way the jungle breathed heavier. Only the coins in Red's sack were light, light in the cruel way, mocking laughter is light, their clink like children giggling at a funeral. Move, I ordered. Nobody asked where. In war, sometimes away from here is the only map. We marched single file, silhouettes against the green. Red sweated rivers, the pack strap biting into his shoulders like ropes carving gallows lines. Luis kept rubbing his wrist where the rash had ripened into a perfect red oval, glowing faintly like a brand. Danny clutched his Bible, lips moving, but I noticed he no longer quoted aloud. His prayers had retreated inside, curled somewhere between his lungs. James walked last. His notebook was cradled like scripture, his face gaunt, every page he wrote a blade carving him thinner. Every gust of wind carried the smell of ink mixed with the metallic tang of dried blood from earlier pages. Crossing a shallow stream, I knelt to tighten my bootlaces. That's when I saw them. 6 footprints. 5 were ours. The 6th was smaller, child-sized, pressed into the same mud. Perfect, recent. It stood where Billy should have walked. Don't say anything, I whispered to myself. But silence is an animal I can't hold long. I signaled the others. Red sneered. Rats. Or your little ghost prince. Rats don't wear sandals, James replied, mild as sugar. Luis muttered, Madre de Dios, and pulled his sleeve over the glowing wrist. Danny didn't look down at the prince. He stared up through the canopy, as if heaven might offer a softer explanation. I stepped over the extra print. It followed anyway. By midday, the sun turned the canopy into shards of knives. Red shifted the sack from one shoulder to the other and groaned, not the kind of sound you want to hear from a man who prides himself on being unbreakable. Let me take a strap, I said. You'll take it when I'm dead, Red smirked. Remember our pact? Together we live, together we go home. I rewrote it. Whoever can carry, keeps. He cinched the strap tighter. I watched the canvas tighten on its own, shrinking like a fist. The coins inside rang soft, delicate, like crystal glasses toasting to someone's doom. "Leave some behind," Danny said quietly, "if we want to get out alive." "You drop your Bible first," Red shot back. "Then I'll drop gold." Danny bit his lip and hid the fire in his eyes. I stepped between them before sparks became flames. Around early afternoon, the PRC-25 radio in my pack crackled alive. I hadn't touched it. The light flicked once, yellow as sick skin. "Falcon 1, I said automatically, a reflex. "Do you copy?" Static. Then a voice, muffled, wet, like someone speaking through soil. "2. I froze. Red chuckled too fast. "Cute." James's eyes gleamed. "It counts forward and backward." Louise trembled. "Throw it away. Don't carry dead men's voices." I twisted the dial. The light died. But the counting didn't stop. It came from the ground. We stopped at a clearing littered with old ash and broken stones. In the shadow of a tree sat a small brass bell, half covered with a strip of red cloth. No one dared touch it. Finally, Red did, because that was his kind of bravery. He lifted it an inch. It stayed silent. Not mute. Listening. "Put it down," I said. He set it back. The instant his fingers left, the bell chimed once sharp, piercing, delicate as a needle touching glass. Danny flinched and spat out a line of Latin. Luis doubled over, clutching his stomach like he'd been shot. James calmly opened his notebook. "I swear that bell smiled." Red muttered hoarsely, and I believed him. We chewed rations like men gnawing on strangers' bones. Every time I tore open a cracker wrapper, I heard coins instead. Red caught my eye and gave a single nod. "You hear it too." By late afternoon, the trail split left into deeper jungle, right downhill toward smoke. Faint cooking smoke. "Right," Red said instantly. "Look, people. People mean problems," I warned. "Jungle means death," he shot back. "At least people can bargain." Danny frowned. "If it's a living village, we ask for water, for directions. If it's a trap, even a trap has someone to talk to." Louis shook his head. "My barrio smelled like this, but here, the smoke smells wrong, like hot metal." James wrote calmly, "The smoke of rice smells like money." Then he looked at me. "Choose, Michael. Every story eventually needs a path with people." I wanted silence. Instead, I gave them leadership. "Downhill," I said. "At first, we didn't see houses. We only felt a village. The sound of chickens, the slow pound of a mortar on rice, and children's voices strangely muted, like laughter stopped halfway in the throat. Then they appeared. 2 women bent over a stream, wringing clothes. An old man hammering wood into a raft. 3 children standing by bamboo stalks, wide-eyed but unmoving. They saw us. They chose not to look at us. The silence of deliberate blindness. "Lower your weapons," I ordered. Red smirked. "My gun is a gift." Yet he lowered it. The coins clinked inside the sack, as if agreeing. Then a boy no more than 8 stepped forward. In his small hands, a piece of red cloth. He raised it like a flag, trembling. "Don't," Danny whispered. "Let him," but the crack of the M60 cut him off. 2 shots. The boy folded like someone had pulled his spine out. The cloth unfurled, blooming red across his chest. Silence. The mother appeared. She didn't scream. She knelt, cradled the boy's face, brushed dirt from his cheek. Then she looked at me. "All gold is blood," she said, her English broken but exact. I'd heard those words before, at the docks in Saigon, from an old woman in brown. Now another mother repeated them. Same words, different mouth, same truth. Red lowered his gun, face pale. He waved it. A signal. I thought. The mother unfolded the cloth. Inside lay a small bell, lined with ash. She lifted it and rang it once. The sound cracked my knees. Underground, a deeper bell answered. Red's sack sagged lower. The coins groaned inside. Luis gasped, clutching his wrist, which now burned like molten iron. James whispered in fluent Vietnamese, "We're sorry." The old man shook his head. "Not sorry, only knowing." I ordered us out. "We leave." Now, Red wanted to argue, but the straps cut deep into his bruised shoulders. His sack weighed more than steel. The villagers didn't chase us, didn't curse, didn't even stare. The mother laid the red cloth over her son, the bell resting on his chest. She never cried. She just watched me, like someone recognizing a face in a nightmare. And behind her, the woman in brown appeared, gliding from the bamboo like a sentence written in smoke. Her Audai stirred in a wind only she could feel. She didn't look at Red. She didn't look at the boy. She only looked at me. Then the great bell tolled once. That night we made camp. No fire, no words. Red leaned against a tree, clutching his sack, teeth clicking like gears in an old machine. Danny tucked his Bible close, silent. Luis moaned in his sleep, clutching his wrist. And then I saw it, a sixth shadow, sitting by the fire pit where Billy used to sit, hands folded like a child copying prayer. Its face blurred, shifting. It tilted its head, listening to bells I couldn't hear. "Go," I told it. "You've taken enough." The shadow nodded once, then dissolved. Behind me, Luis whispered in his dream, "Mama, it burns." Danny breathed like a man pretending at peace. James watched me with wide, wakeful eyes, notebook on his chest. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. That silent witness was worse than any bell. At dawn we moved again. None of us said where. The jungle had already chosen. The radio crackled once more. A single word. 3. The voice was no one we knew. Not Billy, not command. Just a number. We climbed a ridge. Below us, another stream, another village's smoke rising, and the smell, not of rice, but of hot brass, like coins struck fresh. Luis moaned. Red adjusted his sack. Danny whispered a prayer too soft for me to catch. James smiled faintly, as if the story had just gained its next verse. And I, Michael Turner, felt the bell inside my chest toll again, counting us down. Dawn found us with smoke in our lungs and a body we did not know how to carry. We wrapped Billy in canvas because that is what soldiers do, and because wrapping felt like the first step toward forgetting. The canvas darkened where his blood had cooled. The mark on his chest, those curling, deliberate lines had dried to a black gloss, as if written in ink instead of life. "We can't leave him," Danny said. His voice didn't tremble now, it tore. "We won't." Red worked the latch on his M60 the way a man winds a clock. "We don't have a choice. This jungle eats what stands still." Luis wiped fever sweat from his eyes, hiding his wrist as if shame could slow the rash there. James wrote and wrote, and when he ran out of graphite, he used what was left on the page to scrape meaning from the paper's grain. We tried to dig. The ground was roots and rock. Every shovel of earth slid back into itself as if the jungle were exhaling. When we'd clawed a trench deep enough to pretend it mattered, the bell tolled once a slow, iron syllable, and the wall of the grave sighed and fell inward, covering Billy's face with mud. "Stop," I said, though stopping was what the world kept telling us to do. "Say the prayer, Danny." Danny's lips moved. He pressed the Bible to the canvas. "Into your hands," he whispered. "Into your hands." The bell answered him with silence. We left the grave half-made because that was the shape our intentions came in now. We shouldered our packs and turned east, toward a flicker of roofs we'd glimpsed the day before through breaks in the canopy. Not to hurt anyone. We told ourselves that, as men will, and the words sounded almost like a plan. Red's pack rattled with coins. With every step, the metal chimed in a pretty hateful way. "You hear that?" he said, forcing lightness. Rich boy's music. I heard something else. The weight in that sound, a drag you can't chalk to gravity. We followed a narrow path that wasn't on our map and didn't want to be. The jungle thinned. A creek laced clear over stones. Dragonflies lit on the water and skated like thoughts that didn't have to go anywhere. A small hamlet gathered itself on the far bank. 10 huts, a fence made from whatever would keep children in and pigs out, 2 smoke columns rising to explain breakfast to the sky. We stopped where the trees still had us. 2 women stooped at the creek, washing clothes. Their hands moved without looking at us. Across the water, a man hammered a plank into something that wanted to be a boat. A boy ran past with a red cloth trailing behind him like a comet's tail. They don't see us, Louise said. Surprised, relieved, afraid of being wrong. Let's make sure they do, Red answered, and stepped out where the sun could put us on the ledger. The women's hands paused but did not rise. The man with the plank looked up and then looked away, and in that glance I felt everything we were to him. Trouble, coin, a storm you endure, because it will be gone and you will still be here. 3 children appeared like rabbits from brush and froze, their eyes too big. The boy with the red cloth saw red, grinned with nerves and bravado, and broke into a run straight at us, cloth lifted high. Signal, Red said. His voice turned hard in the way a voice turns when it has found an excuse it likes. He raised the M60, as if weight were a game he could always win. No, I snapped, already moving. It's a scarf. It's Red, Danny yelled. Don't! The gun thudded twice, ugly and sure. The boy folded as if the air had been pulled from his bones. His face never changed. He fell with the cloth still in both hands, the red unfurling under him like a small flat sea. The village went silent in a new way. The women at the creek did not scream. They rose. Slowly. The man with the plank put the hammer down with both hands as if it were heavy. Somewhere a hen clucked the same way it would for a hawk. Danny staggered forward, white as ash. He dropped to his knees, pressing his Bible to the boy's chest as if compression could unwrite bullets. Jesus, 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 he said. Too fast to be prayer. Luis was crying in Spanish I didn't know. James held the notebook up in front of his face, the way a man holds a photograph of something that's eating him alive. Red kept the gun at his shoulder, breathing hard, the spent casings at his feet bright as teeth. Lower it, I said, my voice quiet. He was signaling. Red said, not to me. Lower it. I moved between him and the village. He laughed without teeth. The M60 dipped a fraction. He shrugged the pack to settle it on his spine and made a sound like a man noticing, for the first time, that a chore he does every day has become difficult. Christ, he grunted, this thing weighs a ton, because it did. The coins had taken on weight the way grief does, invisibly and all at once. Red tried again to settle it. The straps bit into his shoulders. He grimaced as if a hand under the pack were slowly closing around him. Across the creek, the villagers came. Not a mob. Not panic. They walked in a line. The man with the plank, the 2 women, an old man with a cane that had learned his walk, a girl who couldn't stop looking at the blood. The boy's mother wasn't in the line because she was already there, on her knees beside her child, one hand on his cheek, the other smoothing his hair, as if she could pet him back to a previous hour. She did not look at Red, she looked at me. Her face was lined with sun and work and love. Her eyes were not fire, they were wells. She said something in Vietnamese that I knew because sorrow makes translators of us all. Mao doi Mao. Blood demands blood. Then she reached under the red cloth and drew out a small bronze bell. It had been wrapped inside. The cloth wasn't a signal. It was a shroud. She rang the bell once. The sound matched the toll we had heard under the earth. Low, clean, ancient, the voice of metal that had watched kings rot. The ground answered under my boots with the tiniest shift, the way a sleeper adjusts. Holy God, Danny breathed. Red, Look at what you did. Red's mouth worked. He wanted to say I did what I had to do. He wanted the world to be simple enough to hold that sentence again. The straps cut deeper. He swallowed nothing. James had begun to speak Vietnamese without meaning to. The words came from him like the bell had rung them free. Chung toi xin lor, he said. We're sorry. The old man turned to him and shook his head, a movement that meant you don't know what you are. Luis made a small sound and peeled his sleeve back. The rash had finished its circle. The lines glowed faintly, like embers waiting for a breath. Within the ring, a shape was taking form, an outline of a bell, simple as a child might draw and precise as a carver would cut. Michael, he whispered. It hurts, like it's hot from the inside. The boy's mother lifted her eyes to the trees, opened her mouth, and sang. It wasn't a melody that belonged to any church I knew. It had the shape of a river that remembers being glaciers slow, old, made of years. The other villagers joined, even the little girl, and the song crawled up and down my spine with fingers that were not unkind. The woman in brown stepped out of the tree line as if the trees had made her. No smoke, no fire. The daylight didn't change. She simply existed, and the air behind her did not. Her ow dye moved of its own weather. She looked at the bell, at the mother's hand, then at me, always back to me. Don't, Danny whispered to her, and this time he meant to God, or to fate, or to the part of the story that cannot be altered. The mother stopped singing. She spoke to me in English better than mine. Michael Turner, she said. I heard my name land in my chest like a coin in a well. You opened the door. I had not told her my name. My tags were under my shirt. My mother's handwriting was in Wyoming. The bell said my name with her. My bones said it too. Lady, Red rasped, sinking an inch under the pack he could not put down. Back up. She didn't look at him. She lifted the bell and rang it twice more. The sound moved through us. The gold in Red's pack answered thousands of small notes, slipping free of their metal-like breath. He gasped and staggered to one knee, the gun nearly tipping. He caught himself and bit his tongue hard enough that blood ran, then swallowed his own pain like a dare. James stepped toward the mother, arms out as if to ask for forgiveness he had no right to, and the old man with the cane tapped the ground in front of him. Once. Tap. That was enough to draw a line. The old man's mouth barely moved. No further. James stopped as if tugged by a rope. Put it back, Luis whispered. He didn't mean the bell. He meant the gold, the door, the hours. Red heard him and smiled with too many teeth. You first, he said, but his voice shook from the weight. He tried to stand. The straps dragged him a fraction lower. He laughed a small, wild sound. What the hell? Blood weighs gold, James said, and laughed too, because repetition had turned terror into poetry for him. Danny flinched, as if the line itself had teeth. The old man stepped around the mother and knelt by the boy. He lifted the red cloth and wiped the child's face with care a king would not have earned. Then he wrapped the cloth around the bell's mouth and pressed the bundle into the mother's hands. Thoy, he said softly. Enough. She nodded. She placed the cloth-wrapped bell on the boy's chest and bent to kiss his forehead. When she straightened, she looked at me a final time. No hatred, no plea. Only the knowledge that some debts do not belong to the living. She turned, gently took the little girl by the shoulders, and guided her away. Back up, Red muttered again, because in his world, backing up is what people do when a gun asks. No one did. The villagers passed us as if we were smoke. They crossed the creek and vanished into the trees we'd come from, and the trees closed because they knew how. We were alone with the boy, the bell under his cloth, the line of blood widening under him in a slow grammar no one could fix. Get up, I told Red. He did, with a curse. Half standing before the pack dragged him back down to both knees. The coins chimed, mean and cheerful. He snarled and tore at the straps. The buckles refused to remember how to open. Help him, Danny said, because Mercy still had his hands. I'll help him when he puts the gun down, I said. What if I don't? Red asked, and the question was not to me. You'll fall, James answered, almost happy, and then the earth will know you. Something loosened in Red's face, some mask he had been wearing for so long he'd forgotten it was on. Sweat ran from his hairline into his scar. For a breath, I thought he might say please. Then he slashed the M60 sideways, and the muzzle came up empty, only smoke. He'd burned the belt dry without noticing. Enough, I said. Drop it. He did. Not because I'd asked, because he couldn't hold both weights anymore. The gun hit the dirt. The bell under the red cloth chimed once, answering. We lifted the boy as a man lifts something that once had a name. We placed him under the bough of a tree that looked like it had been waiting for this. Danny said words he could no longer hear. Luis pressed his palm over his wrist, as if he could hold the circle closed. James knelt at the boy's feet and sketched the shape of the bell on the ground, then put his hand over the drawing and hissed burnt by a line that shouldn't have had heat. He smiled through it like a penitent. Leave it, I told him. We're done writing today. We didn't burn the village. That is what I tell myself. We set 2 empty huts on fire to scare away whoever might have been hiding and to convince ourselves we were still soldiers. The flames ran up the thatch and then slowed, thoughtful. Smoke unfurled into the sky like a sentence a man writes, and then considers erasing. The woman in brown stood in the doorway of the last hut to catch, and the fire played across her without changing its mind. She lifted her hand as if weighing air, and then lowered it as if deciding against judgment for now. We turned away. The smoke followed for a while and then chose the sky. Listen, James said. We did not want to. We did. The bell under the red cloth rang twice from behind us. Somewhere far below our feet, a bigger bell counted with it. 1 life taken, the woman's voice said inside my head, inside the trees, inside the weight on Red's back. 4 remain. 4, Luis whispered, as if repeating the number could make it mean less. It's not the village she's counting, Danny said, eyes on the path we hadn't chosen. It's us. Red hauled himself upright. The pack gave him permission this time, just enough. He took 2 steps and then 3, and with each one he grunted like a man carrying a friend. I'm not counted, he said, childish as hunger. I do the counting. No, James said gently. You don't. We walked. The creek ended, then began again, then ended. The jungle stitched us back into itself. Half a mile on, the radio in my pack crackled. I lifted it because habit is stronger than fear. Falcon, I said. Copy. The static arranged itself into a voice that might have been wind and might have been bone. 3, it said. Say again. 3. The number fell like a stone dropped down a well. Then the radio went soft and dumb in my hand. Danny took a step closer to me. Michael, he said, don't let Red carry that alone. I wanted to say he earned it. I wanted to say let him feel it. Instead, I slid my hand under one strap. Heat climbed my palm. The weight leaned into me, and I heard, clear as the bell, the coins move over one another in a soft language only metal speaks. The word they made sounded like soon. We made camp beneath trees that remembered our faces. We didn't talk about the boy, because words are small, and some things are not. The fire tried to be a circle and failed. Luis dreamed with his eyes half open. Danny stared into nothing and smiled in the way men smile when they're watching something only they can see, and it is both beautiful and terrible. James set his notebook on his chest like a shield and whispered, 4, as if lullabies come in numbers. Red pretended to sleep and flinched whenever the pack settled against him. I closed my eyes and the creek ran under them. The boy ran with the red cloth and did not fall. The bell did not ring. Then the bell did. It chimed once from some place that had never been on a map. In the mirror of that sound, I saw the old mother's face and the woman in brown's unblinking gaze occupying the same skin for the smallest, cruelest instant. Their mouths moved together. Blood for gold. I woke with my hands already reaching for a door I could not close. The night held its breath. Somewhere out there, in a village that would not forgive us, a little bronze bell lay under a red cloth. It did not sleep. It counted. And we were all it had to count. The jungle waited. It always waited. By dusk, we moved through a gully thick with bamboo, the stalks packed so tight they became walls. The light slanted crimson, bleeding through the leaves until it looked like the forest itself was on fire. That was when the first shot cracked. The bullet slammed into the mud at Red's feet, spraying dirt. Instinct dragged us down. Danny hit the earth, clutching his Bible tighter than his rifle. Luis screamed as a round tore through the strap of his pack. James calmly pressed himself against a tree, his notebook pinned like a shield. "Contact!" I shouted, though the jungle already knew. Automatic fire poured down from the ridge. The bamboo shredded, splinters flying like knives. I raised my M16 and fired blind, muzzle flash, strobing the dark. Shadows darted between stalks, too many, too fast. "Ambush!" Red roared, swinging his Mars 60, cutting arcs of fire. His laughter was back wild, murderous every burst a hymn agreed. Brass casings rained down, chiming against the coins in his sack until it sounded like two choirs dueling. But this was no skirmish. It was punishment. The ghosts of the burned village had sent their living sons. The air filled with war cries. Harsh Vietnamese words split the trees. I caught only fragments, murderers, thieves. Blood for blood. Figures emerged, lean and wiry, rifles in hand, eyes burning. These weren't phantoms, they were flesh. But when they fired, the gunfire blended with the toll of a bell deep underground. Luis shouted, "They know. They know what we did at the village." His wrist glowed as if agreeing. Danny tried to crawl toward him, shouting prayers, but a grenade rolled into our clearing. The explosion turned prayer to dust. My ears rang, the world shrieked white. Through the haze I saw Billy. Not Billy's corpse. Billy, as he'd been rifle steady, freckles bright, eyes wide. He fired into the trees with perfect calm. "Cover me, Michael," he yelled. He blinked. Billy was dead, buried, counted. Yet when I turned, the smoke parted and he was gone. Only Danny remained, weeping into the dirt. We fired. We bled. The bamboo shredded. Red cut 3 men down with his M60, bullets tearing them into silence. Yet when the bodies fell, I swore they dissolved into mist ash, curling back into the soil. He howled like a victor, but his eyes darted nervously to the sack as if expecting it to burst open and applaud. Luis shot wild, screaming in Spanish and English both, cursing God and the door alike. Blood streaked his arm where a bullet had grazed him. He kept shouting, "We're not guilty. It was him. It was Red." But the jungle didn't care about confessions. James crouched, scribbling with one hand, firing single shots with the other. His notebook was half soaked in mud and blood, yet his hand never stopped. "They don't ambush," he muttered, almost giddy. "They judge. This is theater, Michael. Divine theater." "Shut up and shoot," I yelled. He smiled. "I am." Then she appeared. Through the chaos, at the far edge of the gully, the woman in brown. Standing tall, her dye unmoving despite the storm of bullets. Eyes like molten gold. Hands folded. Every soldier froze when they saw her. Viet Cong and American alike. One man raised his rifle toward her. Before he could fire, a tree branch above him snapped and crushed his skull. No one moved after that. "She's with them," Luis cried. "She's not with anyone," I said. My own voice sounded alien. The woman raised one hand. The firing paused only for a breath, but enough to change everything. Then came the bell. Bong. The earth shook. Bamboo swayed, though no wind blew. The ambush roared back to life. Danny crawled to me, face streaked with dirt and tears. "We have to stop this. Lay down our weapons, beg forgiveness." "Forgiveness doesn't stop bullets," I shouted back. "It stops curses," he cried, and then a round tore through his shoulder. He fell, screaming, Bible tumbling from his hands. It landed open in the mud, pages fluttering like wings torn from a bird. Luis tried to drag him back. Red covered them with a wall of fire, mowing down anyone who approached. His sack shook violently, coins ringing as if in ecstasy. James scribbled faster. "Another one," he muttered. "The second. He's marked." "Shut up, James." But I saw it. Danny's blood spreading across the ground, forming not random stains but a perfect oval. Slowly it closed into a bell. The toll came. Bong. Louder. Closer. 2. James whispered, his smile breaking. Darkness fell fast, like the jungle itself wanted this chapter closed. We pulled Danny back, half-conscious, bleeding. Red dragged his sack like a bridegroom dragging a corpse. Louis staggered under the weight of his own wrist, glowing with fire. The Viet Cong didn't pursue. They didn't need to. They'd given us the message. I stared back into the trees, chest heaving. Shadows still moved. Men or ghosts? I couldn't tell. Billy's freckled face flickered once more between the stalks, lips mouthing the number 2. The woman in brown lingered last. Her gaze pierced through smoke and distance, locking onto me. She raised one hand again, not pointing, not cursing, just reminding. One more. One more. One more. We stumbled through the night like hunted animals. Danny moaned in pain, blood soaking my shirt as I carried him. Red snarled at anyone who came close to his sack. Luis wept openly, whispering prayers in Spanish. James wrote and wrote until the pencil broke. Above us, the stars hid behind smoke. Around us, the jungle breathed in time with the bells. And inside me, I knew. The ledger had moved to its second entry, and it wasn't finished.